Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage. I'm Marcus Engel, and today my guest is David Norris. David, welcome to the program. Thank you for being with me.
Thanks, Marcus. Great to be here.
I'm glad to have you. We had a discussion earlier this week, and a lot of what we were talking about, I kept thinking, gosh, we should have just recorded the show whenever we first talked for the first time, but we'll try to recreate it for the listening public. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Great. So I was really intrigued by this concept, and I want to go back to a little bit of the idea that everything that I do revolves around humanism in medicine and healthcare. And whenever we talk about people being present for one another, healthcare professionals being present for those who are suffering, who are under their care, there's this thing that's not on the horizon, but it's actually here, that everyone has heard about, that seems to be a disruptor like no other, which is called artificial intelligence. And the reason I'm having this discussion today with David, is because I want to see how AI could end up benefiting those direct patient caregivers who are at the bedside, laying hands on patients, doctors who are seeing patients. How could this benefit those people who are hands-on healthcare professionals?
Yeah, it's a really important topic. And as a longtime technologist, I aspire to help providers and care teams with the latest in technology so that they can do what they want to do, which is spend time with patients and really help. And I think artificial intelligence is one of the newest technologies that really brings a huge potential to take some of the administrative burdens that would otherwise take caregivers and providers away from patients and automate that and have AI do some of the tasks that the caregivers don't want to do, but today are forced to. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have in the healthcare system is just the amount of time that providers and care teams spend doing administrative stuff rather than spending it with patients. And AI is definitely making a big dent in that.
Yeah, I've said for many, many years, ever since the computer age really has come along, that we've taken these wonderful people with such giving hearts, such compassionate hearts. They want to help. They are the natural born helpers. And in some ways, we have turned them into data entry professionals. Right. So we've got, I get the good fortune of working with a lot of college students and a lot of nursing students and pre-med students, and they have such a heart. They're going to go out and give the best care possible until they get in there and they've got to deal with electronic medical records. Right. So you're talking about actually helping people being the caregivers, have the ability to be more present because of taking that administrative burden off of the providers and the caregivers.
Yeah, it's interesting because, the government back 15 years ago started the program that has now resulted in having the electronic health record systems that we all use. And that was a really good thing because we can now exchange your medical records between one health system and another. But the consequence of that was that you have to put in all this information and then you have to use these tools every time you're dealing with a patient. And so there's a pro and a con of doing that, right? I think overall it was really a good thing, but it has taken providers away from spending time with patients. So today, a provider will spend more than half their time behind the computer rather than in front of a patient. And that's a problem. And so until a few years ago, there was no real good solution to that. Now with AI, we actually have the ability to, in my words, I would say, make caregivers and providers superhuman. So to give them the ability, for example, to speed read an entire patient chart, maybe 10 years of history in 2 seconds with AI, where if they did that manually, it might take them 20 or 30 minutes, which they can't do. So with AI, we can not only address the administrative burden and hopefully automate some things that will get them back in front of, patients, but we can also help them by uncovering all of those tidbits of data that would take a human too long to do. And we can surface those using AI so that the caregiver can now have at their fingertips all of the information they need to make a good clinical decision. So in some sense, we're making them like superhuman because they can access what they just couldn't do as a human. And that can lead to better care. So we can not only address the problem of like physician burnout, where the administrative burden is so much that it just grinds them into the dirt and they end up exiting healthcare because they just can't do it anymore. But we can go the other direction and actually empower them to do what they want to do, which is spend time with patients, but do it better. And I think that's the real opportunity here, is not just time savings, but actually improving the quality of care by giving them a superhuman capability.
I love that. I love that. We're so again, this is an area where artificial intelligence is going to enhance our lives, not distract from it, not take away jobs necessarily. This is a very tangible means that's going to help us be even more human, which I think is the what's the word I'm looking for here? Is that the juxtaposition to humanism and AI, right? That we're going to be able to marry these two things together for better humanity. It sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. I hear so much about people that are concerned that AI is going to take their jobs or replace them. And I have a different point of view as you look at automation that's occurred over the last 100 years in all different industries. Really what it has typically done is shift where people spend their time. Like the assembly line, maybe that did shift from people doing it manually to having a more automated way to do it, but it allowed humans to do other tasks which were really important. And in healthcare, currently there's a huge shortage of nurses, and there's projected to be a shortage of providers by 2030 of around 100,000 doctors. And so AI has the ability to shift the time that, for example, a nurse might be spending triaging the inbox of a provider and actually shift that over to actually spending time with patients. So now the shortage that is projected for nurses and for doctors can be resolved or addressed by using AI to just allow us to do things that are more important than paperwork or sitting behind a computer. And I think that's the real key. So will it eliminate jobs? Well, it's not really going to eliminate them. It's going to shift where people spend time and hopefully allow us to spend it in the right places.
Yeah. That's really great stuff. That's really great stuff. And I am someone who embraces technology because my life has been so enhanced and the playing field has been leveled as a person with a disability by technology. Maybe not completely leveled, but it's certainly less slanted than it was. And so I'm also thinking about this from a patient standpoint, having been a patient who who had a major infection from hospitalization, hospital-borne infection, and I'm very acquainted with, and I'm very sensitive to safety in hospitals. How can this help patients like me at the other end of the stethoscope? How can they how can AI help them feel safer in their care?
It's a big question, and I'll relate. I think we've all been patients at one point or another, but I had what was told to me to be a very simple orthoscopic knee procedure, and 3 days later ended up with a staph infection that occurred during the operation and almost killed me. Put me in the hospital for 3 weeks, and so that's definitely a patient safety issue. Staph infections happen, but you want them to happen as little as possible. I was the one out of 10,000. And I think AI has some very interesting capabilities to try to address those kind of problems. if you think about today, the workforce, whether it's providers, whether it's care teams, they are pushed to the limit to try to do what is necessary every day. Take a provider as an example. We work a lot with providers that are spending time early in the morning trying to catch up on things, and then between patients trying to squeeze something in, and then after everybody goes home, they're staying up late at night trying to catch up on all their inbox tasks. And there's just no time for them to think about their patients outside of just the 10 minutes they're with them. By the time they're finished, there's just no more time for them to do something. And so on the patient safety side, what we're seeing is that we can actually free up time so that the providers can take an extra moment to think about the situation with a patient, to prepare for meeting them, and to recount afterwards things that they were hearing. And by doing so, they're actually delivering better care. And that can make a huge difference in patient safety because they have a moment to think. It's like anything else. If I had a discussion with a provider the other day, and it was really interesting. They said, I'm a different doctor at 8 a.m. than I am at 5 p.m. And I thought that was very interesting, that they felt like they were so worn out by the end of the day that they weren't thinking as clearly and weren't able to do the same level of cognitive, solutions that they could in the morning. And I think this goes across surgeons and all aspects of healthcare. So if AI can help in taking the unnecessary burden off of them and reduce the cognitive load of paperwork, they can now focus that cognitive ability on patients. And that directly relates to patient safety and doing a better job because we just have given them the ability to focus where they need to focus.
Yeah, good stuff. While you're talking about this and the input and the EMR, et cetera, I'm reflecting on a physician that I know, and who has shared that, and he's working in a hospital, pulmonologist, and he says that at any given time, he's got 14 different regulating bodies looking over his shoulder. And I have to think that there's a way that AI can crunch some of that information too to make that less burdensome.
Absolutely. There's no question. The breadth of what AI can do to help alleviate the overall burden on providers is huge. And we're just scratching the surface right now. 2024 was in one area kind of the year of the ambient note-taking solutions, where providers, rather than having to sit down and type notes, often while they're visiting with a patient, right, they're sitting behind the computer typing, which isn't the best experience for a patient. Now, with AI and ambient solutions, the provider can literally just talk with the patient, and then the computer's taking notes along the way. And that's such a better experience for the patient. And so that ability to alleviate that administrative task and give a better connection between the patient and the doctor was what happened in 2024. 2025, I think, is going to be the year of the inbox, which is an area where providers spend a ton of time every day, like 2 hours, just trying to get through things, again, between patient visits, before and after. So it's just absorbing their cognitive abilities in an unnecessary way. So I think that's going to be the 2025 thing. And all the regulatory pressures around providers that turn into administrative tasks, AI can address many of those. I think it will take a little bit of time. I mean, we can't address all the problems day one. It's going to happen over a period of several years. But I agree with you. The administrative burdens of all the regulatory bodies that oversee healthcare will be dramatically improved over the next, say, 2 or 3 years with AI.
That's exciting. That's really exciting. What are some things, what do you think that what kind of misconceptions do people have about AI in healthcare?
Oh, there's a ton. I
Yeah, of
think,
course.
I think one misconception is that it's going to take their jobs and it's just going to take over the world. And I think it's probably better to think of AI as nothing more than another tool. just like a stethoscope or an MRI. The providers have now been given a tool with AI that can help, but it is not going to do the job for them, but rather it's going to be another tool that they can pull out and use where appropriate. So I think the misconception is that it's like going to just be your doctor. It's not. And I don't think any of us want that. What we want is for our doctors to be able to do what they joined medicine to do, which is to care for patients. But imagine doing that without a stethoscope or an MRI. It's not that they couldn't do it, it's just that they can do it better. And so with AI, they can now do it better. They can, just with the example of ambient listening, they can now focus on the patient rather than having to type and take notes. And I think that's what I think is the biggest misconception. People just think of it as this big brain that's going to take over everything. It's not. It's just a tool, and it doesn't do everything perfectly. It makes mistakes, and you have to oversee it. You have to be careful, but it is a very powerful tool.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where things go in the next few years, because I feel like in some ways, the providers that I speak with, the bedside caregivers that I speak with, everyone feels burdened by the workload. And that's understandable. That's understandable. So I would love to be able to give those people that I love who are at the bedside uh, some extra tools that they can be even more present for those patients. This is great stuff.
Yeah, I think the breadth of what AI is going to do is pretty big. Like AI is going to help us invent new medicines that will help patients. It's going to help monitor patients so that nurses can know when things are going in a difficult direction, and they may or may not be able to know that. So AI will help them know that sooner, so they can help in advance. It'll help in getting patients to do the things that they should do to prevent illness. Just doing their wellness checks and doing their, all kinds of things that they often delay doing. I was looking at fulfillment and compliance numbers yesterday for how frequently do patients have something that their doctor ordered and then they don't do it, like a mammogram or blood work or a colonoscopy. Those things that a lot of us think, wow, that's not very nice. I'm not really excited about doing a colonoscopy, but the fulfillment rates on those kind of orders that the provider puts in, the doctor said do it, and then the patients don't do it. That's a huge problem. And AI can help in taking patients down that journey of being empathetic around, hey, Marcus, I know that doing a colonoscopy is a little scary, and I know you're worried about maybe seeing the results and what will happen, but it's really important to do. And having AI, which is actually really good at the empathetic side of things, helping AI to take a patient down the journey of what they need to do and holding their hand a little bit can be super, super valuable in not treating them after something goes wrong, but actually preventing something from going wrong. So AI has this breadth of what it can do to help in healthcare, and it's all the way from one end to the other. It can do preventative care on the one side, and on the other side, it can help by inventing new drugs that can really treat patients that are seriously ill.
Yeah, yeah. It's a cool time to be alive watching these things happen.
It's the best time ever to be in healthcare because I think this is the biggest transformation that's ever happened in healthcare. And it's important because healthcare is obviously a huge problem. And so if we can make a big dent using AI, it'll be great for patients.
Yeah, yeah. Can you tell us any success stories, like where you've worked with the doc and you've really seen great improvements and all these things like in real time?
Yeah, we have so many case studies. We have one a really great doctor that we started working with who was just underwater. She had thousands of things in her inbox and she couldn't catch up. And these were like lab results from patients who were waiting to hear from their doctor, what do I do next? And having thousands of those means she was weeks and weeks and sometimes months behind. So the patients were like, what's going on? What do I do? And again, that's to some degree a patient safety issue. So we were able to work with her to both get her caught up, but then to keep her caught up. And over the last year, she's been completely caught up, gets back to patients very quickly because AI is helping her to read those things that are coming into her inbox every day, typically like lab results, helping her to understand those and then to communicate to the patient quickly about what the situation is and what they need to do next. So she's now completely on top of things. And not only is that better for the patients, but she now feels more relaxed. She can actually pay attention to the patients rather than being frantic about just trying to work through, a month's worth of inbox items. And when you talk to her, you can see her, she's more relaxed. She has less concerns. She's focused on her patients and she has a life. Like she doesn't have to stay up every night late, just trying to just keep caught up with the latest stuff coming in her inbox. So that's an example where we gave her life back to her. And I think that's a perfect example. We see this across just so many different providers. And it's really fulfilling when you can help them get back to really, really being inspired about being in healthcare rather than feeling like they're on a never ending treadmill and they just can't get caught up.
Right, right. I'm going back to what you were saying about reminders and encouragement for patients to go out and do things like get a colonoscopy. Uh, how easy is it that twice a week I've got my smart home device set to tell me to take the trash out? But how great would it be if something popped up in my phone and said, "Hey, you really need to go get that colonoscopy done, and here's why you should not worry about it." That would, I feel like those kinds of things would enhance. We're talking about really enhancing the lives of providers and caregivers, but that's ultimately trickling down to the patient too, who is going to have more of their time.
Absolutely. A story that I tell often, I'm a big dog person, and my pup, who's sitting here, Wolfie, you take Wolfie to the vet, and they, you do whatever, and then you come home, and the next day, what happens? Well, the vet calls us, and how's Wolfie doing? How's that medicine working? And then 5 days later, they call back and, okay, how's Wolfie doing now? I'm like, I've never had that happen in healthcare. But it happens with almost every vet that I take my pup to. And so the question is in healthcare, why doesn't that happen? Why, in normal consumer experience, you would expect that the retail experience of going somewhere would be very good and that you would have follow up. And that just doesn't happen in healthcare, not because providers don't want to, it's because they don't have time. They are buried. And that's an example where if they wouldn't be able to follow up after a visit with you, there's no way they're going to remind you to take a colonoscopy. I talked to a doctor the other day and the doctor said, if I order labs and the patient doesn't want to do them, well, that's up to them. And that is because of the situation that we as a society have put them in. They have zero time. They are burned to the crisp. And if we can use AI to help, to give them a little time back and make their job doable, they can follow up, and AI can be an incredible assistant to follow up. And again, this empathetic side is really important. It's not about just getting a reminder. It is about talking to the patient about what is it that is preventing you from doing that mammogram. It's scary. I know you might get a negative result, but not doing it is worse. And being able to have an empathetic approach to help patients get over the hump, whatever their hump is, to do that test, that is really the key. And AI is really good at it. We've done a lot of testing at how patients respond to the messages sent by AI versus a doctor. And it has been demonstrated over and over and over in studies that AI does a better job of communicating and being empathetic to the patient. Again, not because the provider can't do it, it's because they don't have time. to sit down and write a nice, empathetic note. They'll write like 1 or 2 lines. You probably got notes from your doctor. You never get a big, long note, usually like 1 line because they're busy. So AI continues to be a potential to tie into the relationship with the patient, to be more empathetic, and then to help them do the things that the doctor needs them to do.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. So for the people out there that are listening who might be in a clinic or might be on the floors of the hospital, how can they learn more about this?
Well, first of all, we love talking with providers and care teams. So Affineon.com is our website, and there's all kinds of information there. There's videos about what we do, and it helps explain how AI is really helping providers. And then, of course, if anybody wants to communicate directly to me, I'm David.Norris at Affineon.com. Feel free to send me a note. Love to hear stories and love to talk about how AI can help.
Excellent. Excellent. I love it. And so I always close by asking my guests, what if you had the largest billboard in the world on top of the world's tallest mountain, what would be your message to humanity?
I think the message I would give is that AI is going to make the most positive impact on healthcare that we've ever seen. So it's a friend, not a foe. It is going to be a great tool, and it's not perfect, but it will help. And that should give everybody some comfort that this new technology is going to make a difference in patients' lives.
Don't fear it, embrace it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like it. David Norris, thank you so much for being with me today. I thank you for the information and for your time.
Well, Marcus, it's really great to be here. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. And listeners, thank you for being on this episode of Compassion and Courage, Conversations in Healthcare. To reach out to me for speaking engagements, books, consulting, etc., please visit marcusengel.com. Until next time, this is Marcus Engel, and this has been Compassion and Courage.